What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Pretty Lies and Alibis. I'm Gigi Fruit Loop. What you know?
Grogu cookies are what's good. That's what I know.
Grogu?
Yeah, Grogu. So the little people say Baby Yoda. It's not really Baby Yoda. It's his name's Grogu off of Mandalorian.
Oh, I call him Baby Yoda.
Yeah. So little dude's birthday's tomorrow. Uh, so we gotta do cookies and all that kind of stuff, and they're so good. So rolling in the dough, I'll give you a shout out there. Uh, One of our listeners who is an awesome cookie baker uh, gave our Brienne our what do we call her, graphics slash whatever, gave her some tips on some cookies, and oh my goodness, they're so good.
Oh, that's awesome. I
Yeah.
love rolling in the dough.
So as soon as we're done with this, I'm jetting to help make cookies and decorate them.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, we want to give a big thank you to Kimberly for the PayPal donation. We really appreciate that, Kimberly.
Thank you, Kimberly.
Also, a shout out to Two Cool T-Shirt Quilts. You can go to twocooltshirtquilts.com/pretty lies and alibis. Get yourself a quilt, pillow, whatever you need to do with those old T-shirts that are sitting in your drawer collecting dust, because we all got them.
Yep. Donna,
Okay.
we saw a picture of your husband with his. It was really cool.
Yes, very cool.
Yeah.
So I have to give a shout out to Michelle over at Journey to Justice on Facebook, because she found a really good little nugget online the other day. There are accounts for Lori, Tylee, and Alex and Melanice on
I didn't see
Smule.
hers.
No, she's on there. I flipped through and saw her account. I
Yeah.
think she's singing with Alex. Anyways, it's tons of karaoke stuff.
Yeah.
And the reason I'm rocking my Grease shirt is because Lori butchered Cool Rider from Grease 2. And I love that movie. It's just, you remember when you were a kid, like you had 7 channels. So whatever you had on VHS is what you watched when it was raining or too cold to go out. Well, Grease 1 and Grease 2 was one of those things. I had literally watched both this weekend.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
y'all go to our social media. I've got it posted there, but whew, crazy stuff. All right, we're going to jump into this arrest affidavit. This is Barry Morphew's arrest affidavit. We did the timeline the other day. Now we're just going to dive in like we normally do with arrest affidavits. I'm surprised a lot of our listeners are not super caught up on this trial, so I'm glad for that.
Yep.
I was worried we were just too far behind the 8 ball on this, but I think we're good. Some of this is not the entire content of the interviews. They, in arrest affidavits, they put in what they got to do to get, to get what they need to get. So it begins saying that Suzanne took steps to end the marriage beginning in January of 2020. And she started telling friends and family about her intentions. She recorded the notes of abuse on her phone. And just days before she was reported missing, she texted Barry, "I'm done. Let's handle this civilly." So Barry initially told investigators that his marriage was perfect and she had no intention of leaving him. And I'm going to tell you, he just can't imagine that she would leave him. It is crazy. And once he finds out about the affair, everything is her fault. So Barry, after telling them that the marriage was perfect, his statements, and they said his statements about his actions before and after Suzanne's disappearance have been proven to be false and misleading. He destroyed evidence that the relationship was deteriorating and that he was involved with her disappearance and homicide. The bike and the helmet were located. They showed no signs of an animal attack, an accident, a suicide, running away, or Suzanne being abducted. With no signs of life, they put in there that she is declared dead. And they note that her last proof of life was the selfie she sent to her lover, Jeff, at 2:30 on May 9th, which is the day she was reported, or the day before she was reported missing, and right before we think he murdered her. So
Yeah,
the telematics
on the bike, there was nothing on the bike whatsoever. There were no like skid marks leading up to where the bike was. So it's not
no,
like,
nothing.
and
I
her
mean,
brakes were jammed on that bike.
yeah. I mean,
Uh,
none of it makes sense. There
so
were
no.
several things he didn't think about when he
Yeah.
did all this.
Yeah.
So the telematics from Barry's truck, cell phone activity, and Barry's own statements confirmed that from 2:47 p.m. on May 9th to 5:37 a.m. on May 10th, he took steps to dispose of evidence of her disappearance and death, creating a false alibi for himself and staging a crime scene.
The
Following the
man the man threw so much trash away. Oh my goodness.
Oh, yeah, I love how, like, in his initial interview, he doesn't even mention that he goes to all these dumpsters and stays at one for 40 minutes because
Yeah.
that's incriminating stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's very narcissistic. It's textbook narcissist. So, following the presentation of evidence by the FBI to Barry, he changed critical details about his activities in the 2 o'clock hour on May 9th in attempts what they think was to match the evidence that he was being told. So since January 21st, Barry has admitted to chasing a chipmunk with a gun around the house while Suzanne was outside sunbathing, shooting a deer with a tranquilizer dart to explain the needle cap in the dryer, disposing of tranquilizer solution in Broomfield, following bulk elk down Highway 50 in the 4 o'clock hour on May 10th to explain why his truck would be heading west where the helmet was found, and stating to the FBI that on April 22nd, 2021, that he looks guilty from the evidence and God allowed these things to happen. I'll tell you, that's what has bothered me the most about everything that we've heard, at least Barry's opinions on Suzanne or stuff. He says a couple of times that maybe this was God's divine intervention for her having an affair.
Yeah. No. I mean, he killed her. Like,
Yeah.
I mean,
It's
I
a
watched, Court TV. They had a thing on, yesterday, I think, and they were explaining about the running around the house.
yeah.
And, uh, they made a great point that if somebody gets shot with a tranquilizer dart, you're not gonna go down automatically.
No, it takes a little while. I think
Yeah,
it's like 4 to 20 minutes that it could
yeah,
take, and
yeah,
they can be fatal. I really do think that that's how he killed her or at least tranquilized her and maybe strangled her because there
yeah,
was no blood evidence in the house.
yeah, yep. So Suzanne's disappearance was called in as a possible missing person who also has cancer. Dispatch told deputies that Barry was driving back from Denver and had no cell service. Investigators say he was at his hotel in Broomfield and had cell phone service. And I think we broke that down a little bit yesterday or day before in our timeline. So Deputy Brown tried calling Barry at 6:05 p.m. with no luck. He finally spoke to Barry at 7:10 p.m. Barry told Deputy Brown that he last saw Suzanne at 5 a.m. that morning and she had recently gotten into mountain biking and was going on a daily basis. So Deputy Brown and Sergeant Mullinax turned onto Highway 50 at 7:31 and looked down the steep inclines for any evidence. They saw the bike down a ravine. They saw no signs of a crash, including flattened vegetation or skid marks on the road or in the dirt. Deputy Brown thought the scene looked staged. What's crazy, these officers work so many cases. Like, they
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, it's not hard to I mean, yeah. But
Well,
that's
here's
what
the
happens.
deal. If you throw, because it looks like he threw the bike. If
Yeah.
you throw the bike, there's gonna be no vegetation prior to where the bike lands that is disturbed.
Yeah, it's
Right.
but, you can watch a lot of episodes of Forensic Files as Barry did, but in the end, you're always gonna leave one little thing.
Yeah.
There's gonna be something that you're
Well,
not gonna do right that's gonna give you away.
yeah, and it's something as simple as if you're weighted on a bike, your tire impressions are gonna be deeper than if it's just a bike rolling by itself.
Exactly.
Uh,
It's yeah. He
so
didn't
it's a
think
bunch
about
of little
that.
things. No, no. So they found the live 22 round on the floor beside the bed, the rifle in the closet, and the rifle storage case under the bed. They noticed surveillance, but the cameras were disconnected. They looked for an item of Suzanne's with scent for dogs to try and track her. They found biking gloves and padded biking shorts in a pile of clothes on the closet floor. So they're going to be able to go back and tell when those cameras are disconnected.
Yeah.
Like, I imagine that, yeah. You don't put those cameras up and then have them disconnected.
Well, and I know too, he of course, he blames Suzanne for everything. At one point, he said that he thought Suzanne may have disconnected him.
Mm-mm.
but I
No,
don't see that happening.
I don't
As much
either.
as she was there by herself,
Yeah.
it's not like she
Mm-mm.
had her lover there. He lived in another state.
Yeah. She would want them on. If she was scared of him like she was, she would want those on.
Exactly.
Yeah. They noticed barefoot prints on the bobcat blade and noticed the blades looked new. Barry told Sergeant Mullinax that Suzanne would go biking between 8 and 9 a.m. Investigators didn't have cell service, so they asked dispatch to contact area hospitals to see if Suzanne had been to any of them. And of course, she hadn't. Sergeant Mullinax asked dispatch to ping Suzanne's cell phone, and they found that the last activity was at 4:23 a.m. that same morning near Poncha Springs. Barry arrived to where the bike was found at 8:42 p.m. He touched the bike and confirms it's Suzanne's. That is key for me. He touched the bike.
Yeah, why would you walk up and touch the bike?
Yeah, it doesn't
If
make
you
any.
watch forensic files, you know they don't let you touch anything at a crime scene.
Yeah, yeah. So on body cam footage, video 3, which is on our YouTube page, Macy's boyfriend and his dad show up. They had talked to Macy on the phone, and his dad suggested they come up and talk to police.
So the deputy asks if Barry and Suzanne get along, and he says they have their normal husband and wife arguments. He's actually the one that introduced Suzanne to mountain biking, and he said she's intermediate with her skills. And so when the boyfriend got to the house, he went to an area where she's known to bike at, and he came back to meet deputies. He said she normally takes her car when she goes biking, and he describes her biking clothes. He describes the color of the helmet, everything. He said she always wears her blue helmet. And the boyfriend had been inside the house, I mean, while this is going on at some point, and when asked if he saw anything out of the ordinary, he said that Mallory's bed was stripped, and that was unusual because she doesn't live there. And the cap to the tranquilizer dart was found in the dryer with sheets from her bedding. Now, according to Barry, she was getting the room ready because the girls were coming home that day. So Mallory said their marriage was I'm sorry, Matt, we're going to move to the daughter's interviews. These happened on May 11th, and Mallory said the marriage was very loving and denied any problems. Mallory said that Suzanne wrote religious devotionals in a journal. It was kept by her bed, and the journal was never found, but investigators did find the burnt remains of a ring binder and a lacquered piece of wood in the fireplace. So Mallory said her bed in the house was always made, and she describes like the color of the bedding. And can I just say, I don't know if I said this on the last podcast, but me and Eric, Big E, Breaking Crime with Big E, we've been talking about the similarities in this case. So his trial just got moved to Fremont County, right? That's where Chad's is. Barry said he's shooting chipmunks. Chad said he was shooting raccoons. I mean, there's a lot of little similarities in here. It's kind of weird.
Yep.
So Macy, who is the youngest, she was interviewed and said her parents argued a lot, and she was scared they would separate or divorce. She didn't think they were doing well as far as a couple, and she thought it would be for the best if they separated. She also says both Suzanne and Barry are in a very unsafe place emotionally, and both of them have not felt safe at some point. She said Suzanne would just never leave or not get in touch with her or her sister. And Suzanne always had her phone on her and kept a charger by her nightstand. I don't think the charger was found. That was one thing
No,
too
from what
that
I
they
read. Yeah.
noticed.
So Barry's interview, he said he texted Suzanne to tell her Happy Mother's Day and got no response, possibly due to poor cell reception at their house. Barry specifically provided his route of travel to Broomfield, and in all subsequent interviews with CBI, Barry never stated that he turned west on Highway 50. He said Suzanne's plans for that day was to get the bedrooms ready for their daughters who were coming home with a friend. In interviews, the girl said their friend wasn't intending on staying. He admits to owning firearms and said they were safe. They were in a safe in the garage. The guns were found and they weren't in the safe. The rifle was in the closet of the master bedroom, and the shotgun was leaned against the wall in the garage. They take his truck to search it. They noticed the new blade on the Bobcat, which we mentioned earlier. March 13th is when they found her helmet. Inside the helmet is a paper with Barry listed as emergency contact and the daughter's phone numbers as well. May 12th, they note Barry's truck is cluttered with personal items and the dash was dusty and dirty. They found her driver's license, credit cards, and other items, including her Camelback hydration pack she would wear while biking. And I know when we hike, whenever you do stuff like that, if you have a Camelback, you always take it.
Oh, yeah.
In all the pictures she has it on.
Yep, you can
So
see it.
obviously she wasn't planning on riding a bike.
No.
May 19th, they recover the tranquilizer dart in the dryer along with Mallory's bed sheets. Suzanne had told numerous close friends she wanted out of the marriage, but Barry wouldn't listen. She suspected Barry of having affairs over the years. It's almost like one of those, if I can't have you, nobody can.
Yeah, I really do get that feeling from Barry.
Yeah,
He's
yeah,
very, and we know, I mean, from what I've read, just researching this case, Barry had affairs,
yeah,
numerous ones it seems, but with his wife, once he found out about this affair with this Jeff guy, his tone changed about Suzanne. You could tell he was ticked that she
yeah,
did it, that
yeah,
she was with another man for 2 years.
yeah. So they go into finding out about her affair with Jeff Leiber and spoke with him first on November 4th of 2020. He said he figured there was no way she was alive and said he did not come forward because he has a wife and 6 kids and was afraid he would lose his job. He didn't think Barry knew about their affair, but he said Barry could easily be set off. And he said, I'm sure you guys know that. November 13th, special agents Grusing and Harris interviewed Jeff in Ann Arbor. He said after her initial message to him, where she said, Howdy, stranger, they started talking on the phone. He said after his first year in college, he attended a party with friends at Suzanne's house. Barry and Suzanne were already a couple, but Barry was not at the party that night. Jeff said he and Suzanne kind of hooked up, but not really at the party that night. And at the time, Jeff golfed almost daily at a course where Barry worked. So Barry had found out about Jeff and Suzanne hooking up at the party. And when Barry saw Jeff at the golf course, he jumped off the tractor and Barry was ready to beat him up. Jeff told Barry he would lose his job and lose everything, and Barry backed down. And that's the last time he interacted with Barry.
Yeah, so Jeff said after that night at the party, the next time he talked to Suzanne was in 2018 when she reached out to him in that message. He told Suzanne that he had carried a torch for her all these years, and they used FaceTime to communicate in 2018. But one of Jeff's daughters saw a message from Suzanne, and that was kind of towards the holidays in 2018, and so he broke it off. And he deleted his Facebook, Instagram, and all the messages between them. They spoke around Christmas time of that same year when Suzanne reached out on his LinkedIn account saying that she was worried sick about him and asked if he was okay. He responded to her and they started talking again. He said at first it was very platonic and then it progressed. And then they stayed in contact from Christmas time 2018 to May 9th, which is the day she was last seen. And her picture to him was the last proof of life they had. She would regularly tell him the reasons that she wanted out of the marriage to Barry. And so between February 2019 and February of 2020, they met in New Orleans, Florida, Indianapolis, Michigan, Dallas, then again in Florida. The last 5 trips, they stayed in hotels. And he said he didn't go to Colorado to see her partially because Barry had cameras all over the place.
Mm.
Also, I think COVID threw a wrench in that. Jeff said he knew they argued a lot. And when he asked Suzanne if he thought Barry would hurt her, Suzanne told him he would never cross that line. He's learned. So Jeff kind of assumed that he had been physical with her at some point in the past. He said they discussed being soulmates because of their approach to the world and people. And he said Suzanne treated people well and didn't do it just to look good, to where Barry was kind of the opposite. It was all about the show for him. When asked how Suzanne would prevent Barry from finding out she was having an affair when they were out of town, Jeff said that he would leave the room when Barry would call her. He said that happened when they were in New Orleans. And other ways they avoided detection was Suzanne knowing when Jeff would be in the car and be able to talk. And they never initiated conversations through a phone call. So they would use LinkedIn to message and then they would figure out a safe time to FaceTime. Jeff said they did talk about being together one day. And he said it wasn't about him, but more about her getting away from Barry because she wasn't happy and mentally she just couldn't take it anymore. They stopped talking on the phone around December 2019 because Suzanne was afraid that Barry would find out. So Jeff created a second LinkedIn account for them to communicate. He deleted that after Suzanne was reported missing because he didn't want her legacy to be the affair with him.
So Jeff recalls Suzanne telling him that while in Mexico, she was listening to music on her phone, and Barry was suspicious, so she handed the phone to him and told him to go through it. They also used WhatsApp because there was no phone record of the conversations. October 2019, they meet up in Dallas. She was on her way to Phoenix to attend a conference so she could become a fitness instructor. Suzanne was questioning what she would do if she left Barry and talked about Barry's mood swings and his anger, saying as long as Barry gets what he wants, he's fine. Jeff said they had a mutual understanding to not talk about their spousal problems with each other. Jeff said by February, Suzanne was ready to leave, but he thought she wanted to wait until Macy had graduated college. Barry would tell Suzanne he was the reason she had nice things like the Range Rover and $1 million home, and would tell her she had the greatest life because of him. Typical narcissist.
Oh, yeah.
Um,
Look, I dated a guy one time that told me ever since I had started dating him that I looked better.
yeah.
He was like, "You look better since you," and I'm just, yeah, looking back now, I'm like, "Are you serious?"
Oh man.
Should have been a throat
So
punch.
yeah, right there. Suzanne had told Jeff when she left Barry they would not be able to talk for a while after. Jeff and Suzanne would talk about mountain biking, and he said Suzanne would take her car to the trailheads and didn't ride in her own neighborhood. He also said she rode in the evenings for 30 to 40 minutes, which that Barry said she would go in the mornings between 8 and 9, and Jeff saying no, that it was in the evenings.
And then the boyfriend's also saying she would always take her car to the trailhead, never
Yeah,
would leave out of her neighborhood.
yep, and her car was still at home.
It's
So
crazy. Her boyfriend knows more about her biking habits than her husband who lives with her.
yeah. So the first week in May of 2020, she told Jeff that the girls were going on their road trip and she dreaded being alone with Barry. Suzanne said she had offered to go to counseling with Barry, but he refused, telling her she needed to be the one. She needed to be who you were to me, who you were to me, and everything will be fine. Which he's blaming her, saying it's her problem and she needs to change. Typical narcissist.
Yeah, exactly.
We can say this after every sentence.
Right.
Suzanne said Barry was against divorce because he wanted the perfect image. I'm not gonna say it. Jeff said Suzanne was naive and saw only the best in people and not what lies beneath. She told Jeff she suspected Barry was cheating when they lived in Indiana. Jeff said hey there, Sherlock.
Yeah, he's
Uh, Jeff said that last year before she disappeared, Suzanne would say she wished he found a girlfriend and would leave.
Yeah. So Suzanne told Jeff as long as she had sex with Barry, he was fine. And she told Jeff she didn't enjoy sex with Barry, but she wouldn't completely starve him of it either. So on May 9th, she disappeared and she and Jeff messaged 59 times on LinkedIn. On May 9th at 2020 at 11:42 a.m., Suzanne sent a message to Jeff saying, "Guess who's alone again?" which meant she was free to talk. So Suzanne texted the photo of her sunbathing to him at 2:03, and her last message to him on LinkedIn is her saying on that she was on WhatsApp. He tried messaging her at 2:39, 2:46, and 2:47, but she never responded. Barry arrived at their home at 2:39, and his phone pings all around the house. That's when they think he was chasing her and not a chipmunk. His phone was put into airplane mode at 2:47, and Jeff gave his DNA, phone records, all of his login information to his social media. And he also had receipts for purchases he made in Michigan on the 9th, and they eliminated him as a suspect.
Yeah.
So it's just one of those things where, you know, yeah, I agree, Sherlock, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, we talked about this before. She went through a lot having cancer. And I mean, you can just see the type of person Barry is.
Yeah.
He's just one of those men that, you know what's weird though? Like, I'm just learning all this stuff. He has a girlfriend now.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, just moved right on. I mean, we're going to find out in the next couple of days, in the next couple of episodes we do. I mean, he was quick to become her guardian, liquidating those assets, getting the money.
Yeah.
Like, this dude's just bad news. But we're going to stop here because from here on, it gets really involved. And those will be some longer episodes that we're going to have where what we're going to do is do all of Barry's interviews first, just so we can see that progression of how a story changes. And then we'll hop over to other people in this affidavit that gave their side. But we're going to stop here for tonight, and we will see you guys soon, and hope you have a good evening.